The Australian Grand Prix is by far the most exciting race that we've had this season. By far. And once again, the FIA is under the spotlight after a record 3 red flags were held in that race. Should races end under a safety car, or should we get some racing action at the end? Let's find out why the drivers were furious with the decisions that the FIA made during the race. We'll start by examining the first red flag, the circumstances surrounding it, and determining whether or not the officials made the right decision. The first red flag was caused by Alex Albon, who lost control of his car at the exit of turn 7 and hit the barriers, causing a lot of debris and gravel to scatter onto the track. Initially, a safety car was called into action, but almost 2 laps later, the race was red flagged. Was that red flag justified? According to the officials, there was so much gravel and debris on the track, and because that part was on a high-speed corner, it was safer to clean it without the cars passing by. However, some drivers and fans disagreed with the decision, arguing that the debris wasn't significant enough to warrant a red flag and that it disrupted the flow of the race. Without raising a red flag, cleanup was straightforward and would have only required a slightly prolonged safety car situation. In particular, George Russell didn't like this because he had taken advantage of the situation to pit for fresh tires, and then ended up losing track position after the red flag was waved. While Russell's race came to an end due to the power unit failure in his car, he still believed that the red flag was completely unnecessary. Here's what he said after the race. "I'm pretty disappointed initially that the decision was made to red flag the race. No words for that. We had a similar situation in Saudi Arabia, with the safety car coming out in unnecessary circumstances. I thought we made the right decision by pitting under the safety car. I was surprised when I saw Lewis and Max stay out, and I was pretty pleased when I saw that because it played right into our hands. And then obviously, red flag ruined things." The second red flag was a result of Kevin Magnussen hitting the barriers after turning wide at the exit of turn 2. This cracked the wheel rim of the car and resulted in the right rear tire ripping off. This incident caused debris to be scattered across the track, prompting the race director to deploy the safety car for the third time. 2 laps later, the race was red flagged. This was a very unexpected direction for the FIA to take, as there were only 3 laps left. Drivers shared that they didn't fully comprehend the reasoning behind the red flags. But what infuriated the drivers was the decision to have a standing restart of the race. At the second restart, while everyone was so focused on Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, there was a lot of drama unfolding within the rest of the track. Carlos Sainz, who was in 4th place, made contact with Fernando Alonso, who was in front of him, sending them both spinning. Along with Red Bull's Sergio Perez, Alpine's Pierre Gasly ran wide and off the track. And as the Frenchman returned to the track, he unintentionally squeezed Esteban Ocon out of the space on the right side of the track, resulting in a collision that sent both drivers into the wall. Further back, Williams' Logan Sargent and AlphaTauri's Nick De Vries come together, eliminating both of them from contention. With significant damage to both Alpine cars and overall wreckage, the race officials had no choice but to stop the race again with only 1 lap left in the race. Verstappen, who had a solid lead over second-place Hamilton and ran the risk of losing the lead at the second restart, criticized the FIA's decision and blamed them for all the carnage that had happened. Here's what he said. "I'm very happy to win the race, but I think the race itself towards the end was a bit of a mess with all the calls. I don't think we needed that second red flag. I think that we could have done it with the virtual safety car, or a safety car at worst. I think it left a lot of drivers confused why we needed a red flag. Today was quite messy. I just didn't understand why we needed a red flag. I think if we would have just had a safety car and then a normal rolling start, we wouldn't have had all these shunts. We would have had a normal finish. So they created the problems themselves at the end of the day." The race ended with a safety car-led final lap, and since the first sector of the lap hadn't been finished before the red flag flew, the order from before the restart was reinstated for the last lap, minus the retired cars. The FIA decided this after a delayed decision-making process that caused confusion amongst the drivers and the teams, and ultimately led to an unsatisfactory outcome for many involved. Lando Norris, despite the fact that he had benefited from the restart following the second red flag, believed it was unfair for the other drivers who had put forth the effort and executed a flawless race to have it all taken from them because of a desire to please the crowd. Here's what he said. "I think if we just finished behind the safety car, it would have been a bit more straightforward. Someone does something stupid in turn 1, locks up, and your race is over because they want to make the show more exciting. In the end, I know it's a show, but we're not here to just put on a good show. We want to race each other and be fair. And I don't think that it's a fair thing for everyone. The whole point of red flagging is, it feels like, was just to put on a show. I think that side of it needs a small rethink. I don't think it needs a change, just a small rethink. This brings us to the very critical dispute of whether the FIA should give priority to the sport itself or the fan entertainment. Finishing a race under a safety car can be anticlimactic and take away from the excitement of seeing drivers duke it out to the very end, especially if you're a fan who's traveled miles upon other miles to watch the race. And with the rising popularity of the sport, the need to hold on to the fans and even attract more, it's understandable. It's therefore important that both the FIA and F1 come up with a better way to handle such situations. But this hasn't been straightforward. A similar situation happened 7 months ago in Monza, when Daniel Ricciardo stopped on the track with just 5 laps left. The race wasn't restarted and instead finished behind the safety car. The FIA and Formula One tried to find a way to change the rules to ensure that races always ended under a green flag, but there were many concerns from the teams of the spectacles being prioritized over the sporting side. In the end, the regulations stayed as they were, with every team voting in favor. From all the comments that drivers have made, we're certain that this issue is going to be discussed extensively in Baku, and maybe then an agreement will be reached. Despite the criticism and confusion as to why the red flags were raised, Alonso was a little bit more understanding of the decisions made by the FIA.
I think the FIA has more information than us, so if there is a red flag, it has to be for that reason.
We'll ask, probably in Baku, what was the reason for the second.
I know that there was a piece of tire debris in the first straight, but the car itself was inside of turn 4, so it felt really safe there.
The safety car is for those kinds of reasons. So maybe for us it was a different opinion, but the FIA are the only ones who have all the cards on the table, so in those kind of situations, we trust them. We try to keep them going. Ending races under a safety car has always been a bone of contention, and this time around it's clear that the drivers preferred ending the race under a safety car. This is because a safety car can provide a level of protection and prevent further accidents during the final laps of the race. This difference in preference highlights the contrasting priorities of spectators and drivers. While the former prioritizes excitement, the latter prioritizes safety, minimizing risks and a clear winner. It's important to note that both perspectives have their merits and contribute to the overall success of the race. Without spectators, there'd be no audience. Without drivers, there'd be no race to watch. Ultimately, it's up to the officials to balance these competing interests and make the decisions that prioritize both safety and spectator satisfaction. What are different ways that the FIA could have handled the incidents in Australia? And do you think a common ground is going to be reached in Baku? Let us know in the comment section below. And yeah, for me, a rolling start would have been a better decision. That way, we get some racing and avoid all the chaos at turn 1. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe, and bye for now.